Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot-Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, Blake and I are going to deep dive on 10 second half stars of the 2024-25 season. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Buddy, don't worry about how I'm doing. All right. How are you doing, my man? I feel for you. All right. I was thinking about you with the Leafs loss there. And, I'm just heartbroken for you. All right. Because you're a good person and you deserve a team that shows up in game 7. What the hell, buddy? Oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't have adequate words. I'm very fed up with the Toronto Maple Leafs, as I seem to be every spring, but this year did feel particularly bad. Mostly just because of the rays of hope, the going up 2-0, the potential to get a 3-0 series lead, frittering that away. The terrible game 5 where we all wrote
Yep.
them off, and then they come back and shut them out of game 6, and then they have another terrible game 7. It's just hilarious the extent to which these this Leafs team goes to just rip out our
That
hearts
hurt
and
you.
stomp on them every single year. But yeah, enough about that. We've got some
Oh, my God.
players to get into here that we don't think are necessarily going to do that to us for our fantasy squads. They're hopefully be much kinder to us. But basically, the premise here is to take a look at second half stars from the 2024-25 season and try to analyze what changed in the second half of the season, why they maybe took a step, or why suddenly their time on ice may have gone up. Maybe that's the entire reason we think that their production went up, and we'll make some prognostication about whether that may happen again next year or if this was just a blip. That's what we're here to do. Blake, are you ready to do it?
I'm ready, buddy. This is going to be a fun one. I love this type of stuff, and I think you listeners out there, you're going to like the players we're talking about. These are players of interest for next season, all of them. So I'm excited to hear your takes on some of the guys that you brought here.
Absolutely. Let's get it started. Right off the top, I have to talk about Matvei Michkov. Been on Michkov a little bit, tweeting some provocative things about 90 plus point potential at times after the season finished here. But Michkov in general, so I've pulled a few stats, basically the first half of the season to last half of the season. I did it by date, so it's not, exactly 41 games and 41 games for every one of these players, but will give us a pretty good idea of what happened from the first half to the second half. So, from the first half to the second half, Michkov improved his time on ice per game by almost half a minute. He improved his shots per 60 by 2.3 shots per 60, improved his individual scoring chances for per 60 by 2.73, and his points per 60 by 0.24. So actually, the points per 60 doesn't improve all that much, but a little bit of a time on ice bump, a little bit of a points bump. It does work out to some more scoring in the back half. And especially, as we all know, once Tortorella left, Michkov kind of went off. Now, of course, we have a brand new situation in Philadelphia. Rick Tocchet comes to town. And yeah, that does raise some questions for me personally. We saw Rick Tocchet when he got to Vancouver really put the damper on JT Miller's ice time for one. Did a similar thing with Pedersen, although there may have been some injury stuff that he was kind of managing there. That's maybe a little bit harder of a situation to parse. That but neither of those things really make me feel confident that a guy like Matvei Michkov, who's not, known for his defensive abilities, which is something that Tocchet definitely demands from his players,
Mhm.
um, it definitely gives me some pause as to what the time on ice ceiling might be for Michkov moving forward. The question is like, how much time on ice does Michkov actually need to be a really huge impact player? And I'm guessing it's not much because we definitely saw that towards the back end of the season. But I think that's where I'd like to start the conversation on Michkov, Blake. Like, what do you see as a likely outcome time on ice wise for Michkov under Rick Tocchet this year? I think it's pretty clear that he's their most dynamic offensive
Mhm.
player. I think Konechny is a terrific player in his own right, but I don't think he's got the level of dynamism or game-changing sheer talent that Michkov has displayed already in his rookie season. So, talk to me about the Rick Tocchet effect on Matvei Michkov.
It's going to be interesting for sure, because we saw with Rick Tocchet here, even players like Andrei Kuzmenko, who, Kuzmenko is not Michkov, right? Michkov is much more
Yeah.
dynamic, shoots a hell of a lot more, but I don't know. If you don't show up defensively, you're not going to get ice time, right? And your point is totally valid as well. Like, Tocchet capped like some of these players' ice time. They weren't getting these massive like Colorado numbers, 22 minutes to like it's closer to 19 minutes for like a top line player. And even in the second year with Michkov, I feel like he's probably going to cap out at like 18 minutes. I think it might be something along that 17, 18 minutes for Mishkov. I think Tocchet does understand the assignment here, right? Like, this is a guy that you need to get going offensively, and you take
Mhm.
the defensive shortcomings, right? You've got other guys in the lineup that can pick up the slack, and we saw what Michkov's able to do once Tortorella got out of there, right? He was really putting his thumb down on Michkov. So it's an interesting situation. I feel like it's not going to be blast off time. I don't think that's my take there. But if he's able to continue to get power play one, which he absolutely should, I think he'll be able to improve on his power play numbers. Tocchet is a big time structure guy. I can't speak for Tortorella. I don't know. It's like I feel like Tortorella was trying to be a vibe guy, like just get people thinking the game a certain way and being accountable. But like I didn't see the X's and O's the way that I think Tocchet is probably going to bring to the table here. So,
Mhm.
I think they'll be better defensively, and maybe that equals more offense here. That said, I think Mishkov's probably in line for like a 70 to 80 point season if he does get that 18-minute treatment. And I think that's pretty realistic.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a season where he scores 63 points in 80 games and obviously gets the Tortorella treatment throughout the year. Without that, what does that look like? It's a 1641 average time on ice on the season across those 80 games this
Mm-hmm.
year. And you don't have to forecast much of a bump, especially if he just takes another step in his development as a player, right? Another year used to the NHL game. Um, yeah, there's definitely scenarios that I can see where Michkov just takes a natural step, gets maybe just one extra minute of average time on ice, and you're looking at a point per game player right away. And then obviously any scenario in which he actually becomes, a 19 plus minute player, that adds a little bit more to that equation. Maybe he has a really efficient year and he actually is pushing that 90 plus point pace. So I'm still very excited about the talent of Michkov. I want to be in on players like this. This is maybe I'm gonna have to call this like the Jacob Chikrin theory, where like we talked about how the original projections for Jacob Chikrin didn't look very enticing
Mm-hmm.
because of John Carlson being there, but we just want to bet on a talent of a player like that and that they'll find their way into advantageous situations more often than not. And if you just assemble a fantasy lineup, it sounds obvious. Like, why doesn't everybody do this? But if you assemble a fantasy lineup with a lot of guys who are really talented and only need things to kind of break their way in terms of the ice time deployment, etc., for them to really take off, if you just assemble a team of those kinds of players, even if some of them don't hit, you have to feel like at least some of them will. And then that's how we can kind of build these high end outcomes for our fantasy teams. So Michkov definitely fits that bill for me. Player I'm still pretty excited about. I didn't think he like hit the lottery in terms of the coach here, and that's definitely going to dampen his median projection, but it's still a player that I'm going to be excited about based on upside. All right, Blake, I'm going to kick it back over to you. Give us the first player you've got.
All right, big dog. I want to talk about the Geekster, Morgan Geekie. All right, Poindexter, as I'm. That's his moniker. All right, and we're rolling with that. Actually, this reminds me of a movie, Revenge of the Nerds. You ever see that movie, Nate? This is way before your time. If you haven't,
I have seen it long
Oh
time
my
ago. I
God,
don't know
why?
if I could remember anything about it, but I do
That
recall the movie.
Of course you saw Revenge of the Nerds, buddy. That's a wildly inappropriate movie that my dad let me watch when I was like 8 or whatever the hell. It doesn't make any sense. There's like full frontal nudity. Like, it's just insane. And that's what I think of when I think of Morgan Geekie. All right.
Full
Shout out to
frontal nudity is what you think of when you
yeah,
think of Morgan Geeky? Okay,
yeah,
okay.
that's right. Yeah.
Just being sure.
Yeah, Morgan Geeky, full frontal nudity. Those correlate. Okay, that's where I'm
All
at with
right.
that. Oh
First
God,
player, here we
we
go.
derailed. Anyways, let's talk about the Geekster. All right, this guy popped the hell off, and it was great at the end of the year. This is a player that yeah, I talked about a little bit in the offseason, but on the year, like it's interesting in the back half here. So we're talking about back half stars. He actually was down in shots, minus 1.98 shots per 60. His scoring chances went down, minus 0.42. So that's nothing crazy. But his points went up. He had plus 1.38 points per 60. Pretty damn nice. And his time on ice went nuts, right? He had over 3 minutes time on ice per game in the back half of the year. So that's a huge factor here, right? One thing I want to say too, like, yeah, his numbers are down a little bit here, which is interesting, but he did have a massive jump overall in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 at 5-on-5 on the year. And it was from like, at 5-on-5, it was like 5.9 last year and then 8.4 this year. So even though in the back half his numbers, sagged a little bit, he was still generating a ton and more than he had historically, right? So, yeah, I think it's just in the back half here, he wasn't generating as much individually, as he was in the first half, but you don't really need to when you're playing with David Pastrnak, do you, Nate?
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah, he does that. All right. Well, Morgan Geekie on the year, yeah, career highs across the board, 57 points, 33 goals. That's pretty damn nice, but we shot 22%, right? That's a career high, something that's definitely going to go down. But one of the things that I was excited about with Morgan Geekie going into this year, I thought he had a good chance at power play 1. And it didn't really happen, right? Until the back half of the season, especially after Marchand got traded, Morgan Geekie's role on the power play, like he was getting those minutes. And even without that power play 1, he spent most of the year with David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha. That's pretty damn nice. Like, this guy, he got 37 points in the last 37 games. That's excellent, right? And the thing is, even before Marchand was traded, he was already cooking, right? So just that trade sort of solidified his role. Really good. He was feeling his plums. All right, we know this. All right, but yeah, I thought this guy was insanely efficient, as I just talked about. That's probably not real, right? 22%. No, that's going to go down. But his exposure to pasta was really the ticket to that spike, in my opinion. Digging in on some of the micro stats here, Corey Schneider, shout out to him. This guy was in the 96th percentile in shots on goal off of high danger passes, right? And David Pastrnak, he was in the 98th percentile in delivering high danger passes. And Zacha was in the 90th percentile in delivering high danger passes. So it makes sense that Geekie would have a massively efficient season, score a career high of goals. He's doing tap-ins, right? Pasta and Pavel Zacha are zipping the puck around, and this guy's at the end of passes just tapping pucks in, right? And he's also really good around the net. So I think, like, you do the math, right? He was good at making space for himself in zone, and his line mates were feeding him like amazing passes. And I think it's that simple, plus the ice time. That's kind of what happened here. So for me, though, Morgan Geekie, we got to think about what he's going to do next year. I do think there's a little bit of ceiling here, ceiling on the power play, right? I think if he, like, maybe 5-on-5, I think that was his absolute ceiling. Like, he's probably not going to do that again. So maybe the numbers go down at 5-on-5. But I think, like, what was his power play points? He only got like 9 power play points. That stinks, Geekster. What are you doing? You got to get in double digits. All right. But yeah, I think that he'll have a better year. If he can get on power play 1, obviously he's going to have a better year power play wise. The 5-on-5 is probably going to go down. So, I mean, he was at a 61-point pace. I think that's, if he's able to get this ice time and power play 1, I think that 60 points is reasonable here. But yeah, this is an interesting player. And I've got some other players that we're going to talk about here. They kind of fit the same mold. And this is very much a guy to me, Nate, and you can, I don't know, I want you to chime in here if you can. He's a guy like Velarde on a line, or a guy like Matthew Nyes on a line, right? His line mates are the one handling the zone entries and basically the offense and the creativity, right? And they draw defenders to them. And Geekie's good at finding those soft spots in the D and just, burying his chances when he gets them, right? So I don't know. What do you think about Morgan Geekie? Do you think that this production is something that is sustainable, Nate? Or is this kind of like, depending on what the Bruins do here in the offseason, is he going to get bumped down the lineup again?
I definitely think like there's a lot of things that will come to pass this offseason that will change how we view some of these players. As currently constructed, the Bruins have really nobody, right, that's gonna challenge Morgan Geekie. Uh, if you go to like Daily Faceoff or one of these sites, like the wingers behind Geekie and Pasternak right now are Marat Kunasnet-Dinov, Fabian Lysell, Cole Kepke. I forget how to
We
say
can't
that.
even pronounce these men's these names. What the hell's going
Yeah.
on?
Vinny Lettieri, Jacob Lauko, John Farinacci. Like
These
this
are the
is
strangest names I've ever heard. Actually, we
these
gotta.
are the players competing in air quotes competing with Morgan Geekie to play alongside David Pastrnak. So I don't think that his role is up for debate at this point. Obviously, anything can happen this offseason. Maybe they land a big fish in terms of UFA or something like that, or by trade or something. You can't rule that out. But as currently constructed, Morgan Geekie's role feels really safe on this team. I don't think he shoots 22% again, but even if he shoots, I don't know, even if he shoots like he shot 13.1% the season
Yeah,
before, even if he shoots 13.1% this year, but he plays like he played 1655 on average through his 77 games for Boston this past season. If he keeps that up where he was more towards the end of the season and he's playing 18 plus, then he could just equal what he
yeah,
did last year just by shooting 13%. Maybe not exactly in terms of the goals, but the point total I think is definitely within reach. So
yep,
yeah, I think there's a pretty strong path as the team is currently constructed there for the Bruins for Geekie to reprise this role and do a lot of the same things. Might be a little less efficient. The goals might come down a little bit, but I do agree with the kind of prototype you're building there, the type of player, the Velarde, Nyes template. I think Geekie does fit that and fulfills that role really well on this team. The downside case, I guess that you could say, is at some point they do try to spread out the scoring. They go through a bit of a drought somewhere, and they move Geekie off the Pasternak line, and all of a sudden, basically the entire reason you want to roster Morgan Geekie is gone, and that is the downside of rostering somebody who may not be the driver of these things on their own. You're just like loving life
yeah,
when they're with that superstar on their line, 5v5 in on the power play. But if that situation ever changes for any reason, then all of a sudden you're left with some dead weight that you're not even sure whether you should drop or you should wait because they might move him back, and that's when you can get into tough situations that way. So it's not a player without warts, I guess I would say, right? Because he is, I think, pretty dependent on David Pastrnak for his high-end fantasy value that he demonstrated at times this year. But as a base projection, I'm pretty confident, unless the Bruins do something pretty significant this offseason in terms of the top six, and the top six left wing in particular. Yeah, I think I'm going to be pretty confidently projecting Morgan Geekie for a median projection that's not that far off where he ended this season.
we.
All right, getting back over to my next player. I got to talk about Adam Fantilli at least once per podcast. I think this off season is what I'm shooting for. We'll see if I can get there.
Love it.
Uh, Over the second half of this season, Fantilli adds an extra 2 minutes time on ice per game played, adds an extra 2 shots per 60, adds almost 4 individual scoring chances for per 60, and 1.08 points per 60. Obviously, good chunk of that comes when Sean Monahan goes down to injury. We know this. This is where Fantilli got that big opportunity and really made the most of it when he did receive it. Now, looking ahead into next year, what's the situation? Are they going to let Monahan kind of rerun things as the top center there once again? It's definitely possible. There's definitely different ways that they can skin the cat here, so to say, for the Columbus Blue Jackets. In the last game of the season, they were running Fantilli with Kent Johnson, James Van Riemsdyk. Monahan was playing with Marchenko and Boone Jenner. They have a lot of different iterations that they can try. Voronkov was
Yep.
obviously a big part of the top six at times throughout that season. The Voronkov Fantilli Marchenko line in particular was kind of the big line for almost a month at one point there. All that to say, like, what we're getting out of Adam Fantilli at such a young age, still 20 years old, this player is just some really good underlying stats. When given the opportunity, he immediately hits and leaves no doubt that he can do it. And so, whether or not he, opens the opening night roster on line one with Marchenko, I think it's a matter of time with Adam Fantilli. And we've seen the bull case, we've seen the upside case here, the point per game upside with Adam Fantilli. These numbers alone, him jumping this much from where he was earlier in the season, I really like to see that from players when they're able to elevate their game when given an opportunity. That to me is a really big hallmark of a player that I want to invest in. I want to invest in players who, show that ability to just pop off when given some extra responsibility. They don't, just, continue at the same level as they were before. They say, no, this is my moment and I'm here to take it. And I think that that's something that we can reasonably expect from Adam Fantilli moving forward. I think Columbus, this team is just getting better. I think they were very efficient last year, and maybe some of that efficiency goes away, but they may also add to the top six here. They may add some legitimate talent to play alongside Adam Fantilli or to just further shore up the depth of this team, which could also lead to him having some, extra safety in terms of his floor projection as well. I just think the world of Adam Fantilli. I
Yeah.
think this is going to be a point per game franchise 1C at the height of his powers, and that could happen as soon as next year.
Next year. Oh my God. I like that. That's a little spicy to me, buddy. But it's just the way this roster's constructed that I feel like it could be another year of him being held back a little bit, right? I think what a great season this guy had though. Like I haven't dug in on Fantilli very much at all, but 32 goals in his second year, playing all 82. Great season for him. And like you said, the data point is when Monahan was out, this guy stepped up huge. He looked great out there. This guy's very dynamic, and he's only 20. So yeah, the future's absolutely bright. I'm wondering about next year though. Like I am concerned that I think his ceiling could potentially just be a 2C, right? A 2C with power play one is probably the best that we can hope for Adam Fantilli next year. That's sort of my take. I do think they're into Monahan for, I think he's signed until 2029 or something like that. And he's obviously had a resurgence himself. So there's, Adam Fantilli's only going to be 21 next year. So does Dean Evison kind of stick with Old Faithful, right? And something he knows he can rely on. We'll see how that plays out, right? If Fantilli does get line one or at the very least power play one, I think like if you look at what he did this year, only 4 power play points for Adam Fantilli this year. That stinks. This is an offensive player. 4 points, buddy. How? I don't get it. I mean, Columbus power play wasn't amazing. I think they were 22nd overall in the league in terms of conversion, but yeah, he's certainly going to get a lot more than 4 power play points. Like I think you can add 10 points to that. So, I mean, if nothing changes and he just gets power play one, like, yeah, now we're looking at a 65-point player, a potentially a 70-point player. So I'm big on the player, just like you. I love what I'm seeing here. I'm not sure that he has a path, at least next year, to that 1C, which is really going to unlock this production that he's going to potentially get.
Yeah, I think the only difference between us there is I don't think Sean Monahan is a player that holds down Adam Fantilli if he is going to be that type of player. So if your long-term view of Adam Fantilli is that he is like a franchise 1C type of player entering his third season in the NHL, I don't think a player as good as Sean Monahan was this past year, like reasonably speaking, I think that's his peak performance for a season. And if Adam Fantilli is all that I believe he is, I don't think Sean Monahan will stand in his way for very long.
Love
So
it.
that's, I think, where we would disagree maybe a little bit on the upside case for Fantilli. All right, kick it back over to you, Blake. Who you got?
Kick it. Oh, I want to rock right now. I'm Rob Basin. I like to get down. You don't even know what I'm talking about. All right,
Nope.
that's in the '80s. You remember that decade, Nate? It
Nope.
happened, before. No, God, okay, all right. You read about it though when you're in your textbooks or on your, when you were, tweeting or whatever the hell you do. I don't know what's going on. All right, I got to talk about Ryan Donato. Okay, we got to talk about this legend. I had him on a bunch of teams. I picked him up right when he started getting hot, and he brought me to a cool 5th place finish in a bunch of spots, a couple seconds, and a first. All right. So shout out to you, Ryan Donato. But yeah, lots of stuff to like about the second half of what Ryan Donato was able to do here. This guy basically just is going to get paid here in the offseason because of what he was able to do. And I love to see it. But yeah, almost 3 minutes average time on ice per game in the second half here. Shots and scoring chances went down a little bit with Donato, but again, it's kind of like Geekie. Like it's not like he's a metrics guy. Donato has always sort of been a per minutes metrics guy. So, decent shots on goal per 60, decent individual scoring chances for per 60. So if those went down a little bit, it's not huge. Like it's not like he's giving you a nothing burger out there, right? He's still generating some good offense individually. But yeah, he scored like +1 points per 60 over the back half of the year. It's excellent. 38 points in the last 38 games Donato had. That's Donato? What? And he was like triple eligible on Yahoo. This guy was a stud. So I love that. I mean, he spent most of the year on a line with Connor Bedard and Ilya Mikheyev. Okay. Gesundheit. Yeah. So Mikheyev, you just say it like that. It sounds like when Gollum, Mikheyev. You ever see Lord of the Rings, Nate? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to hear. All right. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Donato, 62 points in 80 games. Beautiful, right? Career high by a mile. Okay. This guy got 30 points last year in 78 games, 62 points in 80 games this year. Awesome stuff. Massive efficiency. Kind of like Morgan Geekie, right? 17 shot 17% on the year. Did cook on the power play a little bit, 14 power play points there. So that's nice. Average 16 minutes, 19 seconds average time on ice. So pretty darn nice season, but good hits as well. He's a decent banger. I forgot to mention that about Morgan Geekie as well. He's a beefer. He got over 100 hits, so shout out to him. But yeah, I think in terms of why this happened, it's really opportunity, right? It's as simple as that. I think that's what sparked Donato this year. Got a lot of time on the top power play unit. And as I said, Connor Bedard exposure. And I know Bedard it was a down year, and I think a lot of people were disappointed about what happened there. But the truth is, the Blackhawks really were thin up front, and for them to have any kind of success, Bedard had to be the one facilitating. He wasn't the one taking the shots; he was the one facilitating, right? Because they didn't have good enough players to sort of get him in spots where he needed to be, in my opinion, right? Like, I think other teams could see like Connor Bedard's the best player on the team. We can shut him down, make him a facilitator. You'll easily take shots from Ryan Donato or Toivo Teravainen or Ilya Mikheyev, right? Like that's a good defensive strategy, right? But Donato kind of ran with that. Said, you're gonna give me some chances. I'm gonna bury that, right? So yeah, he was efficient. What else? IPP at 5-on-5 for Ryan Donato, ridiculous. 85%. Huh? Like, he was in on everything. But, if your line is Donato, Bedard, and then whatever spare part that the Blackhawks were putting on that line, like you pretty much have to shoulder the offensive load. You have to do everything, right? And I think that kind of explains his high IPP there. It's also nice to see. It's a nice data point, right? This is a guy that, like, his IPP last year, 75%. He's been an IPP in the 70s multiple times in his career, albeit with like lower minutes. So I do think this is a guy that can help drive offense on a line, right? And now he's playing with, one of the best young talents in the league for pretty much an entire season. I think that makes sense to me. So yeah, what else? Think about like I mentioned, he's a per minutes metrics guy. Like I looked at his last 5 seasons here, 5-on-5 shots on goal per 60, 9.5, 8.6, 9.4, 8.07, right? And then he dipped under 8 shots on goal per 60 this last year, finishing with 7.9, but he also had more ice time, right? So, I mean, his role changed a little bit. I just think, again, this is a guy that's always had some potential as a trigger man, but he just wasn't getting a chance to play up the lineup, right? But now he's playing up there with offensive players, and I think it's a good showing of what he can do. He scored more goals than Bedard. Ryan Donato got more goals than Connor Bedard this year. What? That should have been a hot take right there. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and then I'd make that, and people be like, "What are you talking about?" I'd be like, "Ryan Donato, he's going to get more," and then I'd be a legend, wouldn't I, Nate?
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
would have been
more of a
quite the
legend.
call.
Yeah, more of a legend than I am already, and modest as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think next season, Ryan Donato, it's going to be tough, right? I can he do it again? I don't think so, right? Unless he re-signs with the Hawks, and even then, I think the hope is with Chicago that they're going to add players like significant pieces to support Bedard. So, I mean, if Donato goes somewhere else, is he going to get top power play, top line? I doubt it, right? He's going to be more of a supplementary piece on a good team. And that's good in reality, right? This is a great secondary scorer, but that could really sting for fantasy. But I do think this is kind of like your Fantilli take. Like, this is a guy that moved up the lineup. He has the offensive talent and he stepped up in the moment, right? And really delivered and kind of showed us what he's capable of doing. He's capable of driving a line and he's good at putting the biscuit in the basket. So I don't know. What do you think about Donato? Do you think give me your takes on if he signs with Chicago and if he doesn't sign with Chicago? What do you think this player is capable of doing next season?
Yeah, I totally agree there. Like the best case scenario for Ryan Donato's production for fantasy purposes is that he resigns in Chicago and that he kind of runs this back alongside Connor Bedard, even strength and power play. I don't know how many other places there are out there that would give him, top line, top power play kind of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of the season, 18, 19 minutes a night was the norm for Donato. And this is probably the only place that happens. And yeah, there is still some downside potential here that the new coach in Chicago doesn't even view him that way.
Right.
And even if they do re-sign him,
Yeah. New
uh,
coach.
you
Oh
know,
God.
all of a sudden it's Tyler Bertuzzi getting that kind of treatment, and Bertuzzi probably won't do anything with that. But it might just be a spot where the new coach, for whatever reason, doesn't like Donato as much as the previous establishment did. They're talking about Jeff Blashill as a potential Chicago coach. That is not something I'd be
What?
excited about
God
for
no.
fantasy purposes or general getting better at hockey as a team purposes. Uh, yeah, it is a really tough projection at this point in time. Looking forward with Ryan Donato. I don't think there are a lot of scenarios if he does hit UFA, if they don't get a deal done, if he does hit UFA and goes somewhere else. I don't see a lot of scenarios, maybe one of the kind of bottom dweller teams that actually need someone. What if he goes to Boston and he's right there with Morgan
Yeah.
Geekie and they're fighting it out to play alongside Pasternak? That'd be a funny one. Um, but yeah, I just don't know how many places there are where I'd be really excited about him, um, you know, having that role once again. So that's the tough part with Donato. Really hard to see a better situation for him than what he had this past year, at least for fantasy purposes. Uh, that being said, like if you look at the end of season stats, if that's what you're going by, Donato finishes the year 16-18 average time on ice, but we know over the second half he added a ton of ice time to that routinely over 18 minutes, 19 minutes. He had some 20-minute nights. It was definitely wheels up to the back end of the season. And yeah, at this point in time, he's probably their second most effective offensive player on the team, on the roster as currently constructed. So, um, it we really do need to kind of get an indication of what they're looking to do here. If they sign him back and it's like a long-term deal with
Yeah.
big
Big money.
AAV,
Yep.
like that's a pretty big indication to me, right? That they actually do view this player as kind of a top-line player for them moving forward, at least, for the next few years. And that would be a pretty big indication to me that we actually are going to get some of the same deployment for Donato. If it's a little bit more of a cautionary deal, and the AAV isn't super high and they're not really committing that heavily to him, then that would be a little bit more of an indication to me that this is a player that we hope will be a top line player for us, but we probably won't hesitate to demote him if things aren't going too well at the beginning of the season. And then, yeah, obviously you have the other scenario. He goes somewhere else, and then we'd have to see what that looks like as well, how the new team is talking about him, all the rest. But definitely a player where I'm going to be very interested in what the narrative is around the player, what the coaches are saying, what the general manager is saying, wherever he does sign. I think that's going to be very key to kind of building an idea of what the role on this team or another team would be. All right, let's keep moving. My next player, Macklin Celebrini. You know, I like talking about Celebrini. I'm bringing out all my favorites
Oh yeah,
for
you just
Celebrini.
went really easy with this one, Nate. You just took all the hits.
Pretty much, pretty much. Celebrini didn't really add anything in terms of point scoring in the second half. He added 0.07 time on ice per game played. If you're going numerically there, actually minus 0.02 points per 60 over the back half. But he does go up by 0.4 shots per 60 and 0.3.01 individual scoring chances for per 60, which is a massive, massive leap in individual scoring chances for per 60. And that's the part that's really got me excited about Celebrini and what he did in the second half here. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you Celebrini did have a terrific season, scores 63 points in 70 games. That's a 74-point pace, skates almost 20 minutes a night. The individual metrics are all right up there. 14th in the league in shots per 60, 18th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 58th Corsi for per 60, 45th in on ice scoring chances for per 60. He has a 79% IPP driving play on his own, 10.6% shooting percentage, and 10.2% on ice shooting percentage. We could see that number continue to rise as the team gets better around him. I think the world of Macklin Celebrini. I think he is a legitimate star in the league. I think he would go top 15, if not top 10, if the NHL redrafted from scratch tomorrow. I think that this is a true star player. You look at, if you even go back to like the hockey prospecting model to see who Macklin Celebrini's comps were, like statistically who he compares to in terms of like prospects, other prospects who had similar scoring profiles coming out. It's all like Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Michkov, Correa, Lemieux. Like these are the kind of comps that we're getting for
Good
this
God.
player. So yeah, I think the world of Celebrini. I don't know if he's going to be like one of these guys that we're gonna consistently take in the top half of the first round. I'm not like ready to go there just yet, but I do think that this is a player who will score 100 points in a season in his career. I think that point per game is well within reach for next year. I'm very curious to see what San Jose does this offseason. I think they got to really shore up the back end, and that could actually unlock a lot more for Celebrini offensively. We saw a similar situation play out in Washington this past year. They really focus on the back end, add Matt Roy, add Jacob Chikrin, and voila, all of a sudden the offense is humming along much better because they're not playing in their own end the whole time. So I think there's a lot of scenarios for Macklin Celebrini where there's no sophomore slump to be found here, and he actually takes another step next year. I think the world of this player, and I'm going to be heavily invested next year.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm excited about this player too. I mean, you look at what he was able to do on a horrible team. This guy paced for 74 points on a terrible team, 22 points on the power play on a god-awful power play. Like it's one of the things, like, we talked about Michkov earlier, and I think I like comparing those players, Celebrini and Michkov, in terms of like just per game, like the actual players in a bubble, maybe they're comparable. Maybe Michkov even has a bit more offensive upside than Celebrini, but Celebrini is getting 20 minutes a night right now.
Yeah.
Like, and that I don't think is going anywhere. So, like, obviously, it's slim pickings in San Jose, but the forwards are not terrible, right? The forwards are decent, and he's still getting 20 minutes. He's got Tyler Toffoli there, like a veteran presence on his line, right? That's getting to biz. William Eklund is a player that I'm a big fan of as well, and that's a pretty solid line, right? And I think that the fact that this coach is willing to put Macklin Celebrini out as an 18-year-old player for 20 minutes a night, and he does this with those minutes, Like, and then when you look at all the underlying stats as well, like the chance generation, the shot generation, all the high danger passes, like it just everything. This guy's insane off the rush. He's a juggernaut. So I'm just absolutely excited about this player, and I'm excited about the San Jose Sharks. That's a weird thing to say, but like, what are they going to do this offseason? How are they going to supplement this team? Because yeah, like you said, if they are able to sign, just go out and actually sign a top 4 defenseman, not just 1, 4. Sign 4 top 4 defensemen, and buddy, we'll see these guys in the playoffs. I mean, this is a really fun team. I mean, I'm joking around, but Celebrini is electric, and he didn't even shoot very well last year. Like his shooting percentage was 10.6%. That's probably low. This is a guy that's, if he's playing with better players, like being put in better positions, yeah, that shooting percentage is going to go up as well. So I like point per game Celebrini as soon as next year.
Love it. Yeah, there is a fair number of defensemen. Like, I think
Yeah, what are they going to do?
you see what the Leafs did this past offseason, Chris Tanev, Oliver
Yep.
Ekman-Larsson. Like, you don't have to necessarily get like some top end defenseman. They have guys coming up
Yep.
as well. Sam Dickinson from the London Knights, who's on the horizon. There are players within the organization as well, but they don't have to necessarily get like a true top end player. They can add somebody in the Ivan Provorov is up. There are Vladislav
Works.
Gavrikov, like
Ooh,
just
Gavrikov.
NHL caliber defenseman, right?
Yeah.
Actually, did Gavrikov get re-signed? I think this might not be updated, but
Did
either
he?
way, there are players out there, is what I'm saying, that could significantly raise the ability of this team to defend in their own zone, and that could make a world of difference just for raising the overall profile of the team. All right, we do have 5 more players to talk about, but before we do that, I just want to throw this out there. Blake and I have been talking a lot, obviously, about what we want this offseason and the next season to look like for Apples and Junos here, and to kind of fulfill the visions that we have, we're going to need some help. So if you think you have some skills that might be useful to us, in some vein or another. We are looking. We are interested to talk to everybody and see what might be able to work. We could give away Patreon subscriptions for a little bit of work here or there. Nothing too crazy, obviously. Maybe there's an even a larger skill set that you might be able to provide that we might be able to work something else out for. Whatever the case may be, if you have web dev kind of experience, if you have some experience with video or audio editing, podcasting, even joining the podcasting team, data analysis, visualization, stuff like that. If you have a particular set of skills that you think that could be applied to Apples and Junos, then I'd be interested to start that conversation, at least get to know you a little bit better at the very least, but also maybe there's something there and we can continue to build up this brand and to continue to provide the best fantasy hockey content possible. Isn't that right, Blake?
Oh, you bet your sweet bippy, buddy. All right. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And we will hire you. All right. Come on. We need you over here. All right. Buddy, come join. We want you. All right. You get your biscuits over to Apples and Junos. We're creating something awesome over here. So yeah, hit us up. Hit us up in the DMs. Slide into Nate's DMs. He likes that.
All right. Let's continue.
That's what I did, right, Nate? Come on.
That is true. That is true. Blake slid into my DMs and my life changed in an instant. That's about how it went.
Love that.
So, let's kick it back to you, Blake. Who's your third player?
I got to talk about Kasper, the friendly ghost. Okay. Marco Kasper of the Detroit Red Wings. Great season. This is a guy like Nate created a really wicked sheet when we were prepping this pod and looking at guys that had really good metrics over the back half and guys that had really good production over the back half. And they didn't always correlate, right? You had guys that maybe played a little bit better with their metrics, but the production didn't come. Well, Kasper was one of those guys that he had both. The metrics went up and the production went up. So it's really nice to see. Had an increase in ice time, obviously in the back half here, almost 2.5 minutes. Almost 3 minutes. Shots went up by like 1.7. Individual scoring chances went up by 2 points, 1.7 points per 60 above what he was able to do in the first half. So this guy had a great back half of the year. There's no question. 37 points in 77 games, it doesn't jump off the page, right? But he got 26 points in the last 40 games after only 11 in the first 37. So definitely, and he's a rookie, right? So definitely a nice back half here. And it's no surprise to me that this bump kind of correlated with him moving up the lineup, right, into the top 6. And if you look at who his line mates were that he played with for the season, he spent most of the year with Larkin and Raymond. But in the last quarter, he actually spent more time, and I think he was a better fit and more dangerous with Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane. I think that's really where he kind of came into his own. And this is a guy that has some offensive acumen, right? But like, I just think he was really a big fit in that particular line with Kane and DeBrincat, just due to his forechecking ability, his puck battles, right? And this is a guy that goes in, gets the puck, and gets it to talented guys. And I'm not going to talk about him here on this pod, but Alex DeBrincat, man, what a season he had, just in terms of the underlyings, the things that I look at. Like, this guy is generating a ton of, shots and chances for himself and for his teammates. That's an interesting player, because Detroit was really a garbage team at 5-on-5, but DeBrincat was kind of getting to biz. It wasn't due to him. Luckily, Detroit did have a really good power play on the year, so that's sort of how they made it work. But yeah, I don't know. Back to Kasper here. You need a guy like this on your line, right? And we've talked about guys like Morgan Geekie. I said Velarde, Nyes. I think Kasper's kind of in that conversation, right? He's that kind of player. He's not the play driver. He's the supplementary piece. Just tapping pucks in. But one of the things here, you can see by the metrics that we mentioned here, he really turned it up in the back half here. And that's something we got to take notice of, right? This guy finished with a 75% IPP at 5-on-5 in his rookie year. Pretty damn nice. I think that bodes well for him moving forward. That said, we got to temper expectations, all right? This guy's a rookie, for God's sake. He's going to be a supplementary guy. A guy like Geekie or Donato, like I just mentioned, really valuable towards the end of the season. It was interesting. I had Kasper in on all of my bangers teams, and I just couldn't drop him. It was weird. Like, he was chipping away with some points, like I said, but I couldn't drop him. This guy is unbelievable in bangers leagues. I think he's definitely a must roster player in bangers leagues next year if he continues to get this kind of deployment. Like, he got 156 hits on the season. That's massive. 48 blocks for a forward. Awesome. And I think he's got some runway with his shots, right? He wasn't shooting as much. I think it's a player that's probably going to, we could count on a couple more shots here and there next season. Just a player that was a rookie that's, getting a little bit better in his second year. So, yeah, that said, I think the Wings are going to bring him along slowly, right? But in the last quarter of the season, this guy was playing 17 minutes a night. You'd love to see that compared to his season average of just 15, 25. And I think that the Wings like what they see here with this guy. They weren't afraid to trot him out in big situations. The Wings, during this time where he was getting the increase of ice time, they were still sort of in the hunt, right? And they're throwing Kasper out there, so I think that's really awesome. I think it bodes well just in terms of his, the coach's confidence in him. And I do think that he's penciled in as their 2C next year. Like Marco Kasper, 2C there in Detroit with potential for power play 1. I don't think he gets it, certainly right off the bat, but I think he'll have a cup of coffee there on power play 1. And that's just extra gravy. All right. Gravy. Oh, I don't want to go into that analogy. Anyways, I'll just say I like the player. I think he's one to watch. He could give you some nice late round value. What do you think about Marco Kasper, Nate? Do you think like this is a guy that you're interested in some capacity next year?
Yeah, I think it's a player that you have to be interested in just because of what he demonstrated when given the opportunity. I talked about it with Fantilli. I like to see players who grab the opportunity when presented and do something with it. Definitely something that you saw from Kasper this year. I don't know how high the ceiling is with Kasper, which is a bit of a concern for me. Going back to hockey prospecting, this is not a guy who has one of the top end profiles in terms of the production profile coming into the league. And so, he has a really strong opening season here as a full-time member of the Red Wings. It's good numbers, but they're not great numbers, right? Even in the breakout portion, a fair chunk of that, I would say, was due to some efficiency, and you wonder how much of that efficiency was just some good luck going his way, and how much is him just actually being that efficient. So definitely it's hard to get a full read on a player like this after just one season. I do tend to agree. I think like 2C is a spot where they definitely could use some assistance. I think we've seen enough of JT Compher, Andrew Copp to understand that neither of these guys should be in a top 6 in the NHL. And so that's a spot where Marco Kasper can definitely make a home alongside, the Brinket, a Kane, that kind of second line. Have a good spot at 5v5. And then, yeah, the bull case would have to include some sort of power play one time, either due to injury or, forcing his way onto that, maybe as a net front presence or something like that. Maybe there's a path for him there. So that's what I'd be looking for with Marco Casper as a bull case. There's also obviously with any player just coming off a rookie campaign, there's also the downside case where it's just the kind of standard sophomore slump and things don't quite go as well, and it takes them a few more bumps in the road for them to kind of recover, and they never really get on track to the level that they're really contributing for fantasy. Love the peripheral floor, as you're
Yeah.
alluding to. That does give him a lot of agency and usefulness in bangers leagues, especially. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And yeah, in a bangers cats, like as one of your late round picks, maybe in a little bit deeper league, throw him on there, and maybe things really do break his way right from the start, and you're actually looking at a player who, maybe he's only scoring 50, 55 points, but he's doing like the Boone Jenner thing where he's providing you all the
Yeah.
peripherals and you're kind of loving life on that basis. So, yeah, maybe a bit more of a specific type of league where I'd be targeting a player like Casper, but definitely a player with an intriguing situation and profile. All right, my fourth player is going to be Jake Sanderson. Sanderson is a player that I think has really risen in estimation across the league. I think some of it was at the Four Nations, actually, where I think throughout that tournament he really impressed a lot of people by elevating at the kind of highest level of play available. So over the back half of the season, he does add a little bit less than half a minute time on ice per game played, but he does add 1.77 shots per 60, 1.06 individual scoring chances for per 60, and 0.68 points per 60. That's the part that I'm most interested in here. We're starting to see, some trends of players like Quinn Hughes being able to add some shooting prowess to their repertoire kind of after the fact. And that's not something that I'd really seen from defensemen, but I think there might be something there to, kind of these elite level defensemen who really do play the game at a higher level than some other players, and they are continually working on their game and wondering how they can become more effective, wondering how they can have a bigger impact on the game. And some portion of that is them actually just taking more shots and being more involved offensively when they're at this kind of level. I still am not like 100% sure that Jake Sanderson has like, 65, 70 point upside as a defenseman, but this is a really encouraging sign for me. I think it's very clear that he is a true number one in every sense of the word as a defenseman in the National Hockey League, probably in the upper half of number one defensemen across the entire league already in a lot of front offices estimations. So there is that level, and then I'm wondering if this might be a year upcoming in which we actually do see that kind of Quinn Hughes step where he goes from a player who's good and provides a lot of nice points, but now all of a sudden you're adding a ton of shots to the equation, and his fantasy value does a big time curve up as a result, and you're actually quite impressed with what Jake Sanderson brings you. So yeah, it's a spot where I don't know, obviously we're talking about this here in May. We don't know what his ADP is going to look like. Maybe everybody will get steamed up. He did have 57 points this past season already, so it's not like this is a player that people are going to be unaware of in terms of fantasy. But yeah, I'm interested to see if there's another gear left here for Jake Sanderson. And if you're getting him at a level where people are expecting another 57 points or so, I'm definitely interested to acquire him slightly above that cost, with the thought that this might be just that kind of breed of player who's able to continually elevate themselves year after year, continually add to their game, and become a guy who might be able to go up to the next level and become that 70-point player.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this player to the table because it's a guy that I think I'm going to be in on, pretty heavy next season, depending on his ADP. But this is one of those guys that I think is going to slip. Like, who's going out there like, oh, I got to get Jake Sanderson at, 60 or something ADP, even 70. No, I bet Jake Sanderson goes around 100 next year. And Jake Sanderson at like 90 to 100, that's a dunk. That's just dunking on your opponents. This guy had 30 power play points this year, doubling his power play point performance from 23-24. So he's a clear number one power play guy. That's not going anywhere. He's the clear number one defenseman on Ottawa, who is a good, at least a good power play team, right? And I think there's a lot more potential for their actual offense. That really, it was hit and miss, mostly miss, especially at even strength for the Ottawa Senators. But the power play is really good. And Jake Sanderson, the other thing with him, he's great defensively. Like he's just going to be out there. This guy's going to be a minute muncher. He's going to get a ton of deployment, and he's probably the best actual defenseman on the team as well. And I'm saying that over Thomas Chabot. Like this guy stops players from coming into the zone. He stops them from getting chances once they come into the zone. He's really smart, and he's able to rush the puck out as well. So this is a guy I think is just on the come up. 58 points in his third year. That's massive. I love double-digit goals from a defenseman as well. So 30 power play points might be a bit much, but I think he's going to be, from the 20 to 25 point power play. And I think he has a little bit of headroom at even strength as well to get more points. 50 to 60 points, I think, makes total sense. But I like what you said, too, about the Four Nations tournament there. I think he did establish himself. And maybe, I don't know if you've ever noticed this. This is more anecdotal, but I've seen players go to, like, let's say the Canucks players or your Leafs players, they go to the All-Star game and then just being with all those amazing players, and then they come back and they got a little bit of extra juice. And I feel like that might have been a little bit of the case with Jake Sanderson here, but he's a mainstay on that team. Like I've mentioned this before, even a couple of years ago, Brady Tkachuk was saying that this guy as a rookie is like probably the most important player on their team, like in terms of what he brings to the table. So they love Jake Sanderson there. The coach loves him. And now he's getting some offensive production. So I'm here for it. I love this player.
Yeah, for myself personally, I think Jake Sanderson is probably the best player on the Ottawa Senators at what he does, and the kid's only 22 years old. So
what Timmy Stutes? What did Timmy Stutes do to you? All right, damn it, the man is a legend. He's going to be a great player. Oh God, Jake Sanderson over Timmy Stutes? Is that what you're saying, Nate?
I think every general manager in the entire National Hockey League would take Jake Sanderson over Tim Stützle today.
Actually, you're probably right.
Let's keep it going. We gotta close this one out. We're only on your fourth player, Blake. Who is it?
All right, I'll be quick with this one. I just want to shout out JJ Peterka. Is it John Jason or Jason John? Do you know which one is it?
I thought I knew, and then you said it, and now I don't.
John Jason Jackson Jermaine Jeremy Peterka. All right, JJ. He does that. Just derailing all over the place. It's
John Jason.
John Jason. When your first name's John, why not make your middle name Jason? John Jason Peterka. I love it. I'll be quick with this. Like it's not a huge second half breakout, but like this guy's he had an amazing season. Just a kind of a breakout season in general, right? 68 points in 77 games after 50 in 82 the previous season, right? Ice time went up. That's really good. Shots went up. Individual scoring chances in the back half went down a touch, but that's not a big deal. And his points went up by 0.6 over the back half of the years. It's just one thing that's really interesting with Peterka to me when I was digging in, especially in the back half here, he shot less, right? But he became more of a facilitator. And I think that's correlates with him spending most of the season with Tage Thompson, right? When you got a guy who's elite and at that level as a shooter and a playmaker, like you get him the puck, right? I don't know if you can relate to that when you're out on the ice, right? It's like that guy needs the puck, right? Like get him the puck, let him do his thing, right? And then I think Peterka sort of found his, he knew the game plan, right? Get the puck to Tage, right? And he was really good at that because Peterka is a good offensive player. But he also found himself on power play 1 this year, which I love to see, like a 64% power play share for JJ Peterka. I think that's excellent. And that led to 18 power play points, which is really good. Moving forward too, I think Peterka is going to be a big part of the Sabres offense. And I think he's approaching this threshold, this games played threshold, Nate, where players start to really figure it out. Do you sort of buy into that, where they sort of get to this level of like 250 games or whatnot, and they're kind of they sort of maybe go over a hump? Is that something you subscribe to?
I think it's probably more nuanced than that, and I think sometimes we get better evidences of it arriving for some players than others. So, um, I think as like a general rule, like it probably bell curves out that way.
Yep.
But generally, if I'm talking about a specific player, I'm trying to like be a little bit more precise with that.
Yeah, it's nuanced. I like that. I like that analysis there. So yeah, but he's approaching a level here where I think he's feeling his plums. Right. We'll say it again. Yeah, he knows what's expected of him, and he's been put in a good position to succeed. So I noticed again too, and I mentioned this earlier about high danger passes and whatnot, but John Jason Peterka, his shots off of high danger passes went way down this season as opposed to last year, but his actual high danger passes for that led to shots went way up. So it was a kind of a different type of season for him, right? And I think
Mhm.
again correlated directly to him playing with Tage. And, the season before, he was the guy at the end of passes where he gets moved up the lineup. Yeah, get the puck to Tage. It makes total sense. And I think that this is a good example of like a talented player getting moved up the lineup and redefining his role a little bit, just giving the team what they need and giving that line what they need. And I think this season he was a facilitator where last season he was the trigger man. Last year he only played with Tage in the last quarter of the year. In 23-24, when the Sabres were already out of contention, where this season he was sort of stapled to that line with Tage. And I think moving forward, at the very least, like we're looking at a talented offensive player who isn't really he isn't just a shooter. He's a capable player off the rush. He's pretty slick hockey sense, and he's also really good and tight. This guy's got some silky mitts. Oh my god. Great release as well. And we've seen the proof of concept. This guy can get up around that 10 shots on goal per 60 at 5-on-5 number that we like to see, right, Nate? So I just think that we're in for another career high year for JJ Peterka here next year. And I think that he's a big piece of the puzzle here for the Sabres for them to get back into the playoffs.
Yeah. I like JJ Peterka. What's not to like about a guy doing this at a young age? It's pretty clear that he's a very talented player. Um, my concern is still with the efficiency, that we saw this year. Shoots 15.6%. Year before he shot 12.4. Year before his rookie year, only 9.6. So, there's maybe some extent that I do believe that he's gotten better. The league has trended this way in general, so I don't want to, throw that out too much. But also the on-ice shooting percentage this year at 15.1%, whereas the previous 2 years it was 9.7%. That feels a little bit more difficult for him to repeat or come close to repeating. So he's going to have to find new ways to either generate more or continue some really, really high end efficiency on a Buffalo team. Can he do that? If he does play with Tage all year long, yeah, like there's a pretty decent chance that he can come, maybe he doesn't do exactly 15% on ice shooting percentage again, but maybe, the IPP bumps back up. There's ways in which he can account for that. So, yeah, overall, I see the role pretty similarly to what it went this year. I don't know that I'll be projecting him to like take another step necessarily, but I think what we saw this year, we can expect him to live in that same ballpark again next year.
Hmm.
All right. My player number 5, my last player, is actually 3 players. I couldn't pick, so I had to bring them all to the table. They are all Anaheim Ducks: Leo Carlsson, Mason McTavish, Cutter Gauthier. I'll run through some of the stats that we've been talking about. So, over the back half, Carlson adds almost half a minute time on ice per game played, 1.1 points per 60 more, 0.78 shots per 60 more, and 0.8 individual scoring chances for per 60 more. So big ups for Carlson over the back half. McTavish adds about a minute and a quarter of time on ice per game, adds over 1 point per 60, adds 1.5 shots per 60, adds half a individual scoring chance for per 60. Cutter Gauthier actually drops by over half a minute in time on ice per games played, but goes up 0.86 points per 60, adds 3.87 shots per 60, and 1.89 individual scoring chances for per 60. I'll start with Gauthier.
Yeah.
I'd love to see this from a rookie player, for them to improve in the back half of the season. That's really wheels up kind of stuff for me. I love to see that kind of signal from a rookie where, the general narrative is that rookies, they are very inconsistent typically throughout the season. They have ups and downs and they're more pronounced than, veteran players who've been through it before, but also they tend to fade a little bit towards the back end of the season. The grind of an 82 game NHL schedule where most of them have only ever played, 50 or 60 games in a single season before, sometimes less. That is a totally new kettle of fish for a lot of these rookies coming into the league. Not so for Cutter Gauthier. He absolutely goes nuts in the back half of the season, really showcases the speed. He's got size, he's got hands, he's got the shot. I don't know what we really need to see more from Cutter Gauthier for the new coach in town, Joel Quenneville, to really unleash this guy. I like if I was making decisions, this guy would be a top line player next year. I'd let him run. It's a team in Anaheim. Yeah, they want to take the next step next year. One of the ways they need that to happen is for them to really start scoring some goals. Cutter Gauthier on the left side, Troy Terry on the right side, and either of Carlson or McTavish up the middle makes a lot of sense to me as a top line for this iteration of the Anaheim Ducks. But we'll see what Quenneville does there. I went back to look at Quenneville because obviously it's been a while since he's coached in the NHL, for good reason. I'm not going to get into that here, but he is coming in to coach, and he did take a Florida team. Like, this was kind of the start of the Barkov era when Quenneville was in Florida in his last stop there. And it really did seem like he was starting to build something there. He took the team in 2019-20. They scored 78 points in 69 games. That was the very not nice COVID season where the season got canceled. They finished fourth in the Atlantic that year. Then the second COVID shortened season, the 56 game season, they go 37-14 with 79 points, second in the division there. They do lose in the first round, but really big turnaround first season to second season. Joel Quenneville is able to do there in Florida. And frankly, looking at the team that was the initial team that he inherited, they had Huberdeau and Barkov, but after that it was like Mike Hoffman, Evgeny Dodonov, Keith Yandel was playing like 20 minutes a night for this team.
As he
Trocheck
should.
had just come into the league, like stuff like this was happening. So yeah, I think that Quenneville has shown evidence that he can turn a team around, that he can get things pointed in the right direction. The underlying stats, the team level stats for that team really did take a leap from year one to year two. So maybe we don't see it this year with Anaheim, but we've already seen some signs of these players. Leo Carlson, very effective, very efficient in the back half of the season. Mason McTavish gets a big bump in ice time and produces with it. I think there are some real good signs under the hood for each of these three players. I would say the one that I'm personally most excited about is Gauthier for the reasons I mentioned, but I can see a lot of arguments for either Carlson or McTavish kind of taking a stranglehold on, top line center minutes. Whether or not they, kind of designate a true top line and lean on it that way is still yet to be seen. Obviously, the way they've performed to date, it seems a little bit more of a, top six kind of situation in Anaheim. No one has really, elevated themselves to kind of designate a top line there at this point in time. But I definitely think that this could be the season where we start to really see that from one, two, or three of these three players. So I'm open to all of the above. Gautier's the one I'm most excited about. I'm really interested in Carlson. His underlying metrics are not really, what we typically look for. He ranked, what is the number here? 316th in shots per 60,
It's not important.
211th in individual scoring chances for per 60. McTavish looks better in that regard, 74th shots per 60, 51st individual scoring chances for per 60. But I think Carlson is probably going to live as a more efficient player throughout his career than McTavish, whereas McTavish might be a bit more of a volume player. So yeah, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But all that to say, I think there may be more to give from Carlson than McTavish, just based on their trajectories thus far. Carlson's a younger player as well, so I'm very interested in what we're going to get from all three of these players. Can you pick a favorite from these three, Blake?
Jackson Lacombe. Let's go. Yeah, Cutter Gauthier is the most exciting. That's for damn sure of these three. Like, yeah, exactly what you said. And plus, he's a beefer, right? Like, he does stuff like that. So I think Anaheim is going to be an exciting team. Like, yeah, the Joel Quenneville, saga aside, like he's a good coach, right? And hopefully he can get these guys humming. Like, Greg Cronin, the Greg Cronin hellscape is over. All right.
Thank God.
Did you read, there was an article, Cronin was talking about how he thinks he was too hard on the team the first year and like he sort of learned things. He probably did. He probably got a little bit better the second year because that first year was atrocious. But still, like, keeping a leash on these offensive players, I really hope that Quenneville sort of lets it out a little bit and lets these guys be creative because, this team reminds me of San Jose in a way, right? Like lots of good talent and, highlighted by these three players right here and Jackson Lacombe, who I love, and Michkov and Zellweger. Jeez. And they got Lucas Dostal. Like they got the pieces that they need for a good young team. And I could see them doing something similar to what the Blackhawks did under Quenneville, if everything goes well. So yeah, shout out to Cutter Gauthier. I'm a big fan there.
All right, Blake, bring us home with your player number 5.
I'll take us home, buddy. I'll keep it short. All right. I want to talk about Baby Dry, Rupe Hintz, and Thomas Harley. All right. Brum, brum, right? Motorcycle.
Got it. Yep. Very nice.
Yeah, when you have to explain the joke, it's not funny. It's just not funny. And I haven't learned that lesson yet. Anyways, let's talk about Rupe Hintz. Oh, I want to talk about Dallas really quick as a team. These guys both kind of popped off. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll talk about the individual stats, then I'll talk about Dallas. So Hintz, his shots and his individual scoring chances went down a little bit in the back half, but his points were up by almost 2 points, like 1.74 points per 60 in the back half of the season. So that's really nice stuff. Nice to see. And I think with Hintz in particular, and maybe Harley as well, like I'll talk about him in a second, but Hintz's back half pop-off was more, I think, to do with the fact that Dallas was terrible efficiently. Like they were really unlucky in the first half of the year in terms of their conversion. And then that kind of normalized in the back half and Hintz started popping off because his numbers are very similar to what they normally are. Right. So it to me, it was just like they were massively underachieving the first half and then they kind of figured it out in the back half. Right. Especially that Dallas power play where Baby Dry is a legend. And we know this, right? This guy, he's great on the power play. But yeah, Rupe Hintz, always an efficient player. I think like if we look at what he was able to do here, like 67 points, 76 games, that's nice. Better than he was able to do last year. What did he do? Oh my God. He got 40 points in the last 35 games. So 40 points in the last 35 games. Really nice back half for Rupe Hintz here, including 14 of his 20 power play points on the year. So I think that says a lot of what, how bad Dallas power play was in the first half, right? They were garbage, but Hintz, I think he could have had way more if it wasn't that bad, right? And we know how valuable he is on the power play, as evidenced by his yearly on ice numbers, right? This is a guy that pops off in terms of on ice scoring chances 4 per 60 on the power play, his on ice shooting percentage per 60. Like he really makes a difference on that top power play. And now, looking forward, you got one of the best power play players in the game. And now Hintz gets to play with them, right? In Mikko Rantanen. So could be blast off time. That's foreshadowing. But I don't know. If you look at the playoffs here with Rupe Hintz, his time on ice is up, right? As opposed to where it was in the back half of the season. He's getting deployed consistently with Rantanen, and we've seen the results there. Really nice stuff. Ranto's popping off. Hintz is in the sidecar, right? With the little helmet and the propeller on top. Okay. But yeah, Hintz, like I said, the back half surge to me more to do with the underachievement of Dallas as it was to do with him just popping off. Dallas was generating a bunch of chances, right? And I should mention, Dallas as a team this last year, they changed up their style of play like pretty drastically in just 1 year. And, I'm getting this information from, Microstats, Corey Schneider, all three zones, but they went from a somewhat stingy defensive team to one of the better rush teams in the league. But because they were better on the rush, they were giving up more chances coming back off the rush, right? That's kind of the double-edged sword of being a really good rush team. And, like just for instance, last season, according to all three zones, Dallas was fourth overall, fourth best in 5-on-5 chances allowed off of zone entries per 60. So they were suppressing those chances. But this past season, they were fifth worst in that same metric. Like, so they were giving up so many zone entries that led to scoring chances, right? And that's pretty stark. Like, that's pretty significant. So I think that's why, maybe the first half seemed a little bit off, at least in terms of their conversion. You got guys like Matt Duchene popping the hell off because he's a crazy rusher. He's really good at that. But yeah, I'm digressing here. What the hell? Yeah, I think with Hintz in particular, I think we have to see how Pete DeBoer is going to run his power play next season. Is it going to be still 1A or 1B, or is he going to lean into a top unit, right? Like he has in these playoffs. And my bet would be that he does. He leans into a top unit because you've got a guy like Rantanen on here. You can't 1A, 1B Mikko Rantanen, right? He's got to be on the ice for like the 75% power play share. I mean, I just think that's what's going to happen. He's got a true superstar here now. And I think guys like Hintz and Robertson are going to see the benefit. And I wager that, Hintz's power play performance is probably going to get better. This guy got 20 power play points last year. I bet he gets up kind of around his career high, 24 power play points that he got in 2021-22. I think that's probably where he lives. But that's my take on Rupe Hintz. Thomas Harley, I'll just be real quick on Thomas Harley here. We know what happened. Miro Heiskanen got injured. Thomas Harley popped the hell off, right? And I just saw a quote recently from Pete DeBoer in these playoffs saying that their season MVP is probably Thomas Harley. And that's really telling. Like, that's your coach saying that. This guy stepped up huge. When you lose a player who is as good in reality as Miro Heiskanen is, he's amazing, right? He does everything well. And then Thomas Harley just steps right up, and the power play actually got better. The power play got better. They started cooking, like, and Harley in particular, like his points went up 0.19 per 60, which is not crazy, but I don't know. I just wanted to shout out Thomas Harley. I think this is a guy that I'm going to be talking about a lot in the offseason, and a player that I'm excited about, but also a guy that might not be able to reach potential at least next year, because as we've seen in these playoffs here, when Miro Heiskanen came back, he popped right back onto power play one. They kicked Thomas Harley to the curb. What the hell? And then he scored the game-winning goal in overtime. So what does the man have to do to get some power play one respect here, Pete DeBoer? I don't understand. So, but that said, I think that, 50-point Thomas Harley next year. And, depending on what happens in these playoffs, I hope it, he just kind of calms down a little bit and it doesn't steam him up the ADP boards, because I like this player as a later round pick, like a guy like Thomas Harley. Who is that other defenseman we were just talking about? Damn it.
Sanderson?
Yeah, Sanderson. Yeah, Thomas Harley and Sanderson. I think those are guys that I'm really targeting in the later rounds that could provide massive value for your fantasy team. So I don't know. Where are you at with these Dallas Stars? Give me your take there, Nate.
Yeah, obviously I like Harley a lot. You see the time on ice come up a lot this year. We've seen him be quite efficient. This year it's 40% IPP. In the past he has had 46. So that's obviously good. The shots per 60 have gone up every single year for Harley, which is what we like to see. Pretty efficient in terms of the on-ice shooting percentage this year, 13.4%. So he may have kind of topped out a little bit on that regard, but this is a guy who shoots really well himself as well, like around a 10% shooting percentage himself from the blue line. Obviously a talented player. So yeah, I think really the major thing that you're looking at with Harley is, can he hang on to top power play? Can he hold off Miro Heiskanen? Heiskanen coming back and them giving him power play one again is not probably what you want to see.
Yeah, why
but
are they doing this?
there is some time left in these playoffs to see if that's going to be the norm for the rest of their careers together, or what exactly is going to go on there. To some extent, I think that would be all right. We can get Harley at this 50-point pace, and then if he does get power play one, it's actually, just gravy on top. So we'll see, obviously, where ADPs settle and things like that. How probably depends a lot on how Dallas does throughout the rest of the season, how Harley continues to play throughout the rest of the postseason here. In terms of Rupe Hintz, I think it's only a positive that you could possibly view the acquisition of Rantanen for Rupe Hintz's value. He's been playing on a line with Rantanen in these playoffs. they'll continue to move Rantanen around. They'll continue to move Hintz around throughout the season next year. That'll continue to be a theme of this Dallas team, I feel like, as long as Pete DeBoer is the head coach there. But you can see how effective it's been. So I can't expect that to change anytime soon, but you have to view the infusion of a guy like Mikko Rantanen as a net positive. You're also looking at, this power play. Hintz, I do kind of feel like has his spot locked down on that power play because he is so incredibly efficient on the top power play. And while they may do a little bit of 1A, 1B stuff throughout the season at times if things aren't working, we saw them do that a bit. I do think in the end, I think you're right about the gravity of a guy like Rantanen, that he has to be out there a lot. And if he and Hintz are really hitting it off, both fins for whatever that's worth, I do think that there's a bit of more of a bull case for Rupe Hintz than perhaps there has been the last few years, and that has to be exciting for fantasy managers. All right, we made it to the end, Blake. If you, the listener, the viewer, have made it this far, you should click the link in the description, join the Discord community, come talk about all these players with us. Add any second half stars that you would like to talk about, comments, or hit us up in the Discord, and we can have some more conversations. This was a fun one. Fun to dig into the second half star narrative and kind of reevaluate the season that was for these players. Sometimes we only think about, the last 5 or 10 games or how they finished in
Yeah.
our fantasy playoffs, and we kind of use that maybe even unconsciously to bias our takes for the following season. So it's interesting to try to step back and get a little bit more of a holistic view of the season that was. Uh, if you could also like, rate, review, subscribe, or comment, all of that really does help us out. But Blake, I think that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. So hopefully it brought our listeners some value, helped them get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band. They're there for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.